morning and welcome to the CCDEH Data Summit. This webinar series is brought to you by the California Conference of Directors of Environmental Health and graciously sponsored by Decade Software Company. Thank you to Decade for their generous contribution of the webinar service, providing technical support during the presentation and for the webcams. Okay, next slide. Thanks, Luther. I'm Leslie Linbow, Director of Environmental Health for Yellow County and the Chairperson of the CCDEH Information Technology and Data Management Committee. Today, we welcome Luther Lowe as our guest speaker. Luther is the Director of Public Policy at Yelp. He works to educate policymakers about the important role Yelp plays in connecting consumers with great local businesses. Yelp is an online business directory and social networking site that connects people to local businesses and their customers. Yelp has been working to include restaurant hygiene scores in their restaurant search results. Luther is going to tell us a little bit about this work and what's needed to implement this tool in our local jurisdictions. After the presentation, we'll have a question and answer period moderated by Jill from Decade Software. Behind the scenes, we have Vlad from Decade Software who's providing technical support. And I'll provide that number for you if you need it a little bit later in the presentation. Okay, next slide. We have a few ground rules. We want to make sure that you signed on to the Data Summit today so that you can receive continuing education. So first of all, when you signed on, you should have seen a screen like this. And you need to make sure you typed in your name and your email address. If you have multiple people sharing the desktop, please include everyone's names with their names separated by a comma. Okay, next. Okay, so the next screen you should have seen is one like this. And so you can choose to call in using your telephone or you can use the audio on your desktop. So if you want to call in, you would use the drop-down menu and dial the number on your screen. You'll choose I will call in and dial the number on your screen. Then you would enter the access code for the webinar today and your attendee ID. The attendee ID is really important because that helps us identify you as the caller and allows us to determine that you were on the webinar today for purposes of continuing education. If you're not going to use your telephone, use computer. You would choose use computer for audio, and you must have speakers and a microphone for this option. Okay, so go to the next slide, please. Okay, so if you signed on correctly, you should see a window that looks like this. Your name will appear in the participants panel with the phone icon next to it. If you don't see the phone icon next to your name, this means that you forgot to enter the attendee ID. If you want to receive continuing education units, you have to hang up and redial the number and enter the attendee ID as shown on your computer. Next slide. If this has happened and you need to call back in, you can find the meeting information by clicking the Meeting Info tab, which is at the very top of your screen. It's like a pull-down menu at the top of your screen. If you don't remember seeing the call-in information we signed on, you can find the information in the Meeting Info tab. Okay, next slide. And if you have any problems at all, we do have technical support. So Val from Decade Software is on standby to assist you with any technical difficulties. And the number you can reach Val, that is 800-233-9847, extension 713. Okay, so next slide. I'm happy to introduce Luther Lowe to you. Go ahead, Luther.
Good morning, and thank you, Leslie, and thanks to everybody for participating this morning. My name is Luther Lowe. I'm the Director of Public Policy for the popular consumer review website and app Yelp. Today we're going to talk a little bit about the Lives Open Data Standard. I'm going to talk about the sort of history of how it emerged, how it fits into sort of the whole open data movement and open data world. And I'm also going to talk about why open data is important for governments, important for citizens, and important for developing public-private partnerships, like some of the unique ones that we've created with cities like San Francisco and Louisville. So just to dive in here, I have been with the company for just shy of 6 years, and worked in this public policy role for a couple now. And really what I'm doing is helping educate policymakers about the important role that Yelp plays in their communities. In the case of Yelp, hopefully everybody on the call is familiar with the site, but for those of you that may be unfamiliar, it's a review website where people can find local businesses. So the way it basically works is you have a directory of local businesses. When you perform a search, you get search results. When you click on a business page search result, you're taken to listings which have the objective information about the business, the phone number, address, but it also includes review content. So how many, it includes testimonials from individuals who've patronized that business. We've grown to be the largest review site in the country. We have over 100 million people a month that use the website. We have over 40 million reviews on the site. And so it is really a novel platform for exploring partnerships with government and identifying opportunities where government data can augment the consumer experience on Yelp. And I'll talk a little bit more about that in a bit. But I think Yelp probably, even though only 20 to 30% of businesses reviewed on Yelp are actually restaurants, I think the sort of gateway drug, if you will, to becoming a avid Yelp user is using it for restaurants, and I think most people do associate it with restaurants and restaurant discovery. So it's a really exciting type of place to imagine putting restaurant hygiene scores, and that's one of the reasons we're so excited about the initiative. So that takes me to Lives. Lives is the open data standard that we developed in 2012, and we announced our first Live city in January. And Lives stands for Local Inspector Value Entry Specification. We originally had a different name, but we did a backronym sort of like the U.S. Congress when we wanted to really underscore a point. And the point for us was that the more conspicuous sharing of restaurant hygiene information to citizens reduces hospitalization due to foodborne illness and raises the bar for the restaurant industry. So we based that assertion off a study done in Los Angeles County in the late 90s when they were examining the difference between when the display of the sort of ABC letter grades on the storefront wasn't required, or at least wasn't required to be as conspicuous, to when it was. And over a 2-year period, they found a significant reduction, 13% reduction in hospitalization due to foodborne illness, and within a couple years, the overwhelming majority of restaurants had A or B scores because presumably these restaurants felt like there was more pressure for them to kind of up their game and have better best practices. So we're not being hyperbolic when we say we believe that projects like this can actually save lives, and so that's why I'm so excited to be participating this morning and helping propagate this type of open data standard. So again, just to talk about Yelp and why it's such a novel platform, we are all about connecting people with great local businesses. Yelp, people don't get on Yelp to look at pictures of their ex-girlfriend. I mean, I think that's what people do on Facebook. I use Twitter if I want to figure out what's going on in the news today. you know, I use Google if I want to do a search for general information. People use Yelp when they're looking for a local business. So, you know, the average amount of time people spend on the site is not very high because they're just hopping on, performing a search, and then going offline and presumably spending money. So, to package restaurant hygiene score information with restaurant information on Yelp is a really exciting idea, because basically you're catching somebody in the middle of making their dining decision, which is seems to be a lot smarter place to catch a citizen with that information as compared to when they're, you know, standing right outside the storefront. So we're really excited about this project. We only currently have it in 2 cities, but we're growing. And I'm going to dive into some of the specifics, but I just want to underscore that point about how this really is the best place to capture a citizen who is amidst their dining decision with this information that you know, the city or municipal entity is creating. So the history of the initiative really was started May of 2012. We had been, the engineers had been kicking around the idea of creating an open data standard around health inspection scores, but really there was not a serious effort that coalesced until Tim O'Reilly, who's sort of a public intellectual and is an advocate of open data, approached us and encouraged us to sort of sit down with technologists from various city halls. So we had folks from Philadelphia, Chicago, San Francisco, New York, all sort of on a listserv, and every day we would sort of share ideas and collaborate on what a national open data standard for sharing restaurant inspection scores might look like. As that process moved along, the White House Chief Technology Office got involved, and as you know, as with many sort of multi-city brainstorming collaborations, it kind of sprawled into a place where it really wasn't making a lot of movement. It was just a lot of ideas getting thrown into the pile, and so we needed to really move it along. So the White House kind of stepped in and said, tell you what, let's just start with New York and San Francisco. Let's move forward with what works for them, and that is you know, that was sort of the spark that kind of got it from a discussion and a collaborative discussion to an actual place where we were writing the actual what was originally called the Open Health Inspection Standard, so OHIS, which later became LIVES. So my role at Yelp is to not develop to write the actual specification, but to think about how to get the most bang for our buck and propagate this thing in as many places as possible. And so politically speaking, I had noticed that the U.S. Conference of Mayors was going on that month, and I thought, gosh, what a better place to announce the creation of this open data standard than at the U.S. Conference of Mayors, and they have a technology task force. We had been working closely with the city of San Francisco, which is where Yelp headquarters are, and we decided, you know what, let's launch some examples of San Francisco at the U.S. Conference of Mayors to really start a national discussion in the cities and municipal entities about the benefits of using open data in restaurant inspection scores on platforms like Yelp. San Francisco made sense, and really part of the reason I'm excited about talking to everybody today is the state of California is the Yelpiest state in the country, and I'm defining Yelpiest as if you divided California's population by the the average monthly traffic on Yelp, you would see a pretty high ratio of Yelp users. This is a very, very popular service in the state of California, and so that's why San Francisco was a great partner to kick it off, and why we're now looking at entities like San Diego and Los Angeles. So that takes me to sort of the next part of this discussion, and that is what is open data? When I talk about open data, what exactly are we talking about? And I thought, what more of an appropriate place to get the definition of open data than an open platform like Wikipedia? And Wikipedia defines open data as the idea that certain data should be freely available to everyone to use and to republish as they wish, without restrictions from copyrights, patents, or other mechanisms of control. And so really, the idea here, and really what got us excited, is that citizens subsidize in a sort of a free and civil society in our democracy. Taxpayers, like all of us on the call, are subsidizing the creation of this information. And open data, at least in the context of governments, is a very seductive idea, because what you're doing is taking this information that technically should belong to the taxpayers, that Joe Citizen could walk into any city hall or a county office and slap a Freedom of Information request on the desk and say, hey, gosh, I really want to see what this restaurant, their restaurant hygiene results were 2 years ago. Anybody could technically do that, but the idea of putting it into sort of a machine-readable format, allowing it to be ingested by popular platforms like Yelp, is a very significant movement, and I can't overstate that enough. The idea of sort of liberating the people's data, if you will, is kind of the utopian vision of taking government information and putting it out there and publishing it to the citizens that have subsidized its creation with their tax dollars. So, this is a very exciting and seductive idea. You see a lot of discussion about open data in the technology industry, and this is a big priority of the Obama administration. The use of the creation of the Chief Information Officer and Chief Technology Officer. This is one of the big things that they drive, and more recently, you've seen their offices open up some of the health data to allow private industry to go in and create products that are useful to people. Because at the end of the day, most people, when they're going out to eat, don't get on a .gov website. People, the governments create sort of clunky websites. They're just not in the business of creating apps that are elegant and have a high amount of utility. They're not in the business of creating websites that have highly professional user interfaces. They're in the business of providing services to citizens, and like police, fire, what have you, and building roads and bridges, and so if you take a company like Yelp or Instagram or Facebook or Twitter, Google, these are internet companies whose bottom line depends on creating something that is optimized down to the pixel, that is hiring the top minds in terms of user interface design, and are A/B testing every possible scenario that a user could get into. And so having people like that think about what the optimal way to display information seems to make a lot more sense than having the government sort of own that type of role. And so the reason open data is very exciting is because you basically create sort of this win-win situation in the form of a public-private partnership where governments share their information in a machine-readable format on their .gov servers that hardly anybody ever goes to. the developers go to that server, or go to that government entity and say, gosh, this we've got, in the case of Yelp, 100 million eyeballs a month that come to our site, and this information that they wouldn't otherwise access seems like it could actually be a helpful thing to augment our own service with. And then suddenly that information is useful. It's liberated. It's given back to people, and you sort of close the loop with the taxpayers who are creating it. And so this is why I think open data is being talked about right now a lot in the internet industry, and why it's such a seductive idea, because you really are able to give information back to citizens. The most famous example of open data, most recent famous example of open data in terms of a public-private partnership, where a private entity develops an open data standard, collaborates with a city hall, and creates an open data standard that allows people's lives to be improved because they have a ubiquitous platform, is the GTFS platform. And GTFS stands for General Transit Feed Specification. So really all that means is individuals, in this case at Google, said, let's create a standard language, a standard set of rules that if you are a city and you want to share your public transit data in real time on our Google Maps platform, this particular set of information needs to be in column A, this particular set of information needs to be in column B, and so on. So really, this isn't, you're not getting into deep thinking computer science where you need a PhD in number theory to figure this stuff out. It really is, it is technical by definition, but you don't, it really, in many cases, is as straightforward as putting a certain column into a different place than it might have originally been. But GTFS is famous because, basically you have, I'm going to briefly turn off my webcam because I'm going to go refill my coffee. With GTFS, you have a system that nearly a decade ago, you had a Google engineer who in their 20% time said, gosh, we've got this ubiquitous mapping service. We've got a industry-leading platform that people are using to figure out how to get from point A to point B. You can go to a city like San Francisco or Portland or Los Angeles, and technically you could get on their website and try to figure out how to get from point A to point B with public transportation. But it requires you to go to two sites. And so this data lives on one server. We've got the eyeballs. We've got everybody using our server. So why don't we figure out a way to get our systems to talk to each other? So this engineer at Google sat down with folks at the city of Portland, and they figured out a way to get the Portland city data, the live public transit data, to talk to Google Maps. And so what that allowed was citizens in Portland to plot their routes from point A to point B using public transportation in real time. So today, when I am, I live in San Francisco, when I go to the airport, if I want to figure out when the next BART train is, I can get on maps.google.com. I can put in my address. I can put the destination as San Francisco International, and it'll tell me, Luther, don't leave yet because the train doesn't leave for another 20 minutes, and it's going to cost you $8.15, and if you miss that one, then the next one's 20 minutes after that. And this is really powerful. It's I don't have to go to some special separate site and try to kind of coordinate the directions and sort of overlay the map 1 onto map 2. the BART system doesn't have to spend tens of thousands of dollars on developing their own proprietary app that hardly anybody downloads because everybody's already got Google Maps and they figure that's easier. So it's really a win-win. And this really was a big inspiration, and once the GTFS standard was developed, it really caused a lot of municipalities to sort of sit up in their seats and say, wow, I want to do what Portland did. And so I think we're starting to see that a little bit with the live standard, because people want, I think most forward-thinking health departments want to put this information back in front of citizens and make it as accessible as possible. So now we're getting into the actual specification for LIVES itself. And again, LIVES stands for Local Inspector Value Entry Specification. So this is just a quick overview of the process and what it means to kind of, or what one has to undertake in order to kind of get the ball rolling with a LIVES feed. Right now, it's still in sort of its early stages. We're, I would say, kind of in the bottom of the first inning on this whole process. We're getting quicker at it. We only have 2 cities online so far, San Francisco and Louisville. We're now in discussions with a handful of others. I think the next cities we're going to put online, or next entities will be Wake County, North Carolina, and Los Angeles County, and I think San Diego is also in the mix as well. So what is the process? So how does this work? How do we pick which city we're going to work with? Because we are sort of manually onboarding these cities, we don't have a streamlined process. We have to sort of be selective in who we bring on, and right now we're sort of sorting according to population. And another factor is a more technical factor, is the default is the default orientation or paradigm of that health inspection score a 0 to 100 score. So if, for example, you're like San Francisco or Louisville, and 100 means the restaurant in its routine inspection got a perfect score, and a 45 means they got a terrible score. Those are the types of entities that, at least in terms of a plug-and-play standpoint, are easiest to work with. It doesn't mean that we can't work with a system that's pass-fail or a paradigm like New York, which sort of is an inversion of the numeric system. So if you get, I think you can get up to, like, hypothetically 1,200 points in New York, and that's a bad thing. And if you have 0 points, that's a good thing. The only thing is there has to be some normalization on the back end. And so departments of health, many of you are probably thinking, gosh, sort of monkeying with the numeric values that we use seems a little bit treacherous. That creates sort of political obstacles and causes the process to get bogged down. So in terms of the seamlessness, or just like the ease of integration, moving the process along and onboarding the city, we're kind of sorting and prioritizing by population in terms of, like, how many, let's get the most bang for our buck, and ease of use. And so Louisville doesn't necessarily fit the population bucket there, but Louisville actually has one of the most sort of forward-thinking, progressive mayors on open data in the country, and he's one of the heads of the tech task force at the U.S. Conference of Mayors. A lot of different mayors look to Mayor Greg Fisher in Louisville for advice on, hey, what should we be doing? What's the next big thing? And so that was sort of a political choice. But really, I'm eager. I think our next city that we're really eager, or I'm sorry, county to get online is Los Angeles. So the process, how it's worked with these 2 cities is, the first thing to do is just look at the examples and decide, is this something that you want to do? I think getting buy-in up and down your organization is going to be really important. Making sure that this is information that you want to put in front of citizens. And I think, again, there's some great arguments to be made for why citizens should be entitled to seeing that. And again, we point at that Los Angeles County study. The second step is emailing healthscores@yelp.com. That goes to myself as well as a handful of engineers and product folks at Yelp who work on this. And that just gives us a heads up that you're interested in building a lives feed and participating. So we try to respond to every single email we get on that, and once we do respond, it's helpful for these individuals to have some familiarity with the technical aspects of this feed. And in many cases, like the folks that have been the easiest to kind of work with are those that say, hey, we pretty much have already built a prototype of this feed, or we have an example that you guys can begin playing with immediately. And so once we respond and you've got your feed set up, we'll actually work hand in hand to debug and publish. It's really important that you have kind of a bright technical person who can be on call, because there is a couple-week process where, as we are ingesting the data into Yelp, numerous back and forths happen throughout the day. Hey, this particular restaurant seems to be displaying weird data. Or interesting case with Louisville was they would have the way that it would get coded in their system is they would say counter clean. That's what literally would be the text inside the database to indicate that the counter was not clean. And so we had to do there were about 40 different factors that we went through and negated the statements and said things like counter unclean. And so when you go, and I mean, these statements came out of statutory language, and so we don't want to necessarily take liberty and kind of rewrite this stuff, and so we want to work hand in hand with the health department to ensure that they're happy with how these things are negated, because we don't want to we don't want to wait for a law to pass to describe how the data would be shared. But again, Yelp is in the business of building products that touch millions and millions of people, and so putting information in front of a user that says that the restaurant did not have a perfect score because their counter was clean doesn't make sense. It's not very, it's counterintuitive. And so going through and just making some tweaks like that is just one of many examples of the process as you sort of debug and work toward the ultimate publishing. So again, the bottom line is just reaching out to us, we making sure that it makes sense for our roadmap and onboarding lives, and then working kind of hand in hand, being on call as we work to publish the feed. And if you remember nothing else from the presentation today, I'm going to go into sort of some of the technical aspects of the feed here in a sec. But if you remember nothing else, it's this yelp.com/healthscores. That's going to be a reference that you can go back to over and over again to basically understand what exactly you need to share. And then, of course, the healthscores@yelp.com is a handy resource as well. So now I'm just going to go into what is actually in the lives format. Again, lives stands for Local Inspector Value Entry Specification. So lives, there are a few requirements. It requires that the data be presented in several CSV files. CSV stands for comma separated value. It's basically an Excel type file that allows us it's a structure that allows things to be sort of in a machine readable format. These CSV files are consolidated into a single zip file. And the following requirements apply to those files. All files in a lives feed must be saved as comma delimited text. So comma delimited is a form of a CSV. The first line of each file must contain field names. So field names for each file are defined below under the files heading. all field names, and I'll get into the field names in here in a sec. All field names are case sensitive. Field values may not contain tabs, carriage returns, or new lines. Field values that contain quotation marks or commas must be enclosed within quotation marks. In addition, each quotation mark in the field value must be preceded with a quotation mark. This is consistent with the manner in which Microsoft Excel outputs comma-delimited CSV files. So in my case, I'm not a technical person. I mainly use Excel when I'm dealing with databases like this. Excel has the option to export CSV files. So if you're not a technical person, you're like me, you're not a technical person, it might be that you help sort of build the example file using Excel, and I've actually done that before with small data sets. I've built my own live feeds. It's really pretty straightforward. But the Excel, but just understand that when you get to these massive data sets, you're going to probably be interacting with your data managers and individuals who are generating updated, at least daily refreshed, updated zip files, which contain these 4 CSV files that I'm about to dive into. So field values mustn't contain HTML tags, comments, escape sequences, or anything else designed to break or confuse our computers. Remove any extra spaces between field names. Many parsers can consider the spaces to be part of the value, which may cause errors. Each line must end with a CRLF or LF line break character. Files should be encoded in UTF-8 to support all Unicode characters. Files that include Unicode byte error mark BOM character are acceptable. Files must be provided in a single zip with flat hierarchy. So most of these things are, I would say, probably default settings for most CSV files. The one thing I would underscore here is the single .zip with flat hierarchy. Really, the best. Now, what we the best way to do this is really to have a single zip file that when our system opens the zip file, it only has 4 files in it. These CSV files that I'm getting into in a sec, and that daily zip file, our system basically will automatically download on a daily basis. And so if, for example, an inspector has gone out and there's been an update in the system, that gets entered, it gets ingested by Yelp and published almost in real time. The idea here is that we don't want there to be a lag or a delay in that information being displayed to citizens. We want to be at parity with if I'm on the cities.gov website and I want to look up a restaurant and I pull up that information, there shouldn't be a difference between the information I see on the city website and what I see on Yelp. That's why these structure is so important. So let's actually get into the different files. And so these CSV files all sort of talk to each other according to the business ID. And I'm going to talk about 4 files. First one here is business CSV. The second one is inspections. The third one is violations, and the fourth is feed info. I'm sorry, 5 files, and then the 5th one is legend. And some of these are optional, but let me just talk about the businesses, and hopefully this will be fairly intuitive. So the businesses.csv file contains information about businesses, and this file is definitely required. So some of these may not be required, but the businesses.csv is. So let's talk about what that file actually contains. So the title of column 1 is going to be business_ID. And what this is a unique identifier for the business. And so for many cities or county entities, this could be the license number. But this is really important because it makes sure that we don't mismatch. And if you've got McDonald's A with 100% and McDonald's B with 80%, it makes sure that we don't accidentally put the 80% on the McDonald's A. The name of the business, the address, the city, the state, postal code, obviously this information. Latitude and longitude, so actually city, state, postal code, latitude, longitude, and phone number are not required fields, but the advantage of being able to share that information in your business.csv file from your data set is that it allows us to get higher match rates. So at some point along the way, Yelp basically has to take your database and our own database and try to overlay them and figure out what the match rate is. And using our, that can range between sort of 45 and 60% if we take Louisville and San Francisco as examples. And so the ones that don't match will actually manually, human beings on the back end will go and basically match those manually. But the more information you can provide in the form of sort of lat longe, city, state, phone number is a very important one. Then the higher the match rates are, the less work that's required to match the whole data set, and the easier it is to get the database online. So that's the businesses.csv, and again, this is really designed to help us match with our larger database. So inspections.csv it contains the information about inspectors' visits to businesses. Again, this includes a column with the top line is BizID. Again, this is the unique identifier described. So again, let's say that the BizID for this McDonald's A I mentioned is 123. So as long as the BizID in inspections.csv and the BizID in businesses.csv is 123, as long as that is the same number, then the information about the inspector visit will get mapped to that McDonald's. The second column, and this is probably creates the most sort of this is the most sort of controversial column, if you will. This is the score. And this is what I discussed earlier about how we prefer this to be on a 0 to 100 scale, or really we require it to be on a 0 to 100 scale. Now it says required no. That is sort of more of an engineer no. As I was talking to our product people yesterday, they said it technically is not needed, but we do need some type of interpretation of your hygiene score information that falls on a 0 to 100 scale. So again, if you have a pass-fail system, if you have a system that only is ABC, I mean there's systems that in the Netherlands that have smiley face and frowny faces to describe whether or not the restaurant was adequate or not. Somebody has to make a call and say, okay, the frowny face is everything below 70, and the smiley face is everything 71 through 100. We don't have to, and it's up to this municipal entity whether or not that numeric information is displayed. So the pushback that we get, from cities like New York is this can be confusing because we've got this inverted system where 1,200 is a really bad thing, or 200 is a really bad thing, and 5 is a pretty good thing. We don't, we'll say to a city like New York, we won't display our 0 to 100, but that is a required field. And the reason we require that is because ultimately we want to build, we have plans on a roadmap to build histograms for every city, and all that means is basically it puts it into context for these individual users. So if I'm on a business page, I can click on a link and I can see how this restaurant stacks up alongside other restaurants. I can see, okay, this restaurant performed in the top 97 percentile in terms of inspections. Because the truth is, a lot of citizens don't necessarily understand what it means to have an A with a 94% score. They don't, when you're in a city like New York, not to beat up on New York too much, but most restaurants have A's. And overwhelming majority have A's or B's. And so we're trying to help citizens make more sense of that, our users make more sense of that. If everybody gets an A, it's not a very helpful system. And so our ability to build a histogram relies on this column, and so this is a required column. The date when the inspection was performed, a description of the inspection, so is this a description contained details on the outcome of the inspection, so pass, fail. The type of inspection, was this an initial, routine, follow-up, complaint? So we've covered businesses.csv and inspections.csv, and you can see the way that these files sort of interact with each other, the way that I'm able to kind of link the inspections information with the inspections.csv information with the business information is through this business ID column. So here's the third one, violations.csv. Again, there's this required business ID column. This is an optional file. Technically, we don't require this in order to display it, but we definitely will prioritize, entities which are sharing all of these files, because we believe at the end of the day we want to provide as much information as possible to our users, and we want to allow people to drill down into why a specific violation was given. So again, this provides the date, the code for the violation. It's recommended to be based on the FDA food code. Municipalities can decide to use pre-existing codes for the field, and then a one-line description of the violation. So clean, counter clean is an example of this. And then feedinfo.csv contains information about the feed itself. It just should contain a single row. So when the feed date was generated, that helps us keep track of when we last got information from the entity. The feed version, in this case, the live specification, the current version of the live specification is 0.4.1. The municipality name, so if it's San Francisco or Yolo County, the municipality URL, so the URL publishing the municipality's website, and the contact email. And then the score legend. The legend file contains mapping from scores ranges to human readable descriptions of the scores. Municipalities can use this file to communicate the way scores are traditionally presented. So this is what I was talking about earlier with the idea that New York could share or you could have a pass-fail system in your city, and say that everything above 70 is a pass. And the way that we're able to generate the word pass or no to display the word fail is based on the legend that you provide here. So this is obviously important if you fall into that type of category. And then finally, I've got 2 slides left, and we can jump into some questions. The actual what this ends up looking like. So Gary Danko in San Francisco, one of the businesses that I tried to annotate. I guess that's not going to work. One of the as San Francisco is our first city to launch this in. We've got Danko is probably one of the most famous restaurants in San Francisco. You can see just below the phone number information, just below the website, just below Explore the Menu, there's this health score that says 92 out of 100. And that's what we're talking about when we say we're displaying this information to the millions of Yelp users. When you click on that link, 92 out of 100, you're taken to this page, which allows you to drill down on, and you can see today's score for Gary Danko is a 92 out of 100 based on the last inspection, which was routine on March 6, 2013. The violations were included a moderate risk vermin infestation, unapproved or unmaintained equipment of utensils, food safety certificate or food handler card not available. And then you can actually go into the previous inspections and see what the violations were. And then we've got a little section here under the 92, and I think this is an important thing to note, that under that 92 you see the paragraph that's sort of covered up by the pop-up window, but we can put stuff like a link to the city website or the county website to allow people to go to the original data if they feel like they want to go to the source of the information. So that is all I have, and I think I can now sort of field questions.
Hi guys, thank you so much, Luther, for the great presentation. We have about a couple of minutes to answer any questions you guys may have. To be sensitive to everyone's schedule, we will do our best to answer as many questions as possible within the allocated time frame. If you do happen to have a question for Luther, go ahead and click on the raise hand on your panel's window on the left-hand side. And if you have your question answered, you decide you don't have a question, just go ahead and lower hand as well. So we're going to go ahead and take some questions. If you guys have any questions, please feel free to raise your hand. Go ahead, Leslie.
Hi, Jill. Thanks. Well, you know, one of the things that Luther said, maybe this isn't so much a question for Luther, but it's a question for Darrell Booth, who's the president of Decade Software, and he's on the call today. One of the issues is, you know, Luther brought up that, you know, they're going with the largest jurisdictions of biggest populations first, and Yellow County is more of a small to moderate-sized county, so, you know, we would be lower down on the list. But Decade Software serves the majority of environmental health jurisdictions in the state. Is there a way, Darrell, for the data with through Decade and Envision Connect can be made to meet the requirements of Yelp so that more jurisdictions can come on all at once?
Hi, Leslie. This is Darrell.
I can hear you.
Okay, fine. Forgive me. I'm on the train, actually, so if you hear some background noise, that's why. Luther, thank you. Thank you, Luther, for making such a great presentation. As we've discussed before, we're very interested, and the health department's on the line. Many of them are very interested in engaging in the LIVES protocol. To answer your question, Leslie, from my perspective, having studied the LIVES file format, we are just a millimeter away from providing that information in the proper format. In other words, we're just a baby step from engaging. I think the only matter that remains is dealing with this matter of the score. You know, being able to turn something that isn't scored traditionally into a score that has some meaning for the Yelp folks, and that seems to be an agency-by-agency decision. Just working off the top of my head, I would anticipate that from our perspective, it's going to be those jurisdictions that have a press agent instance in Decade vernacular. That just means they're already publishing their inspection results to the web that are the closest to it. But Luther, question to you, you know, among these jurisdictions, many of them are using identical technology, and would it make sense to talk about bringing 30 or 40 online all at once if they were essentially identical in their format and you had one technical contact?
I don't know the answer to that question, because I think that at least, I mean, obviously I think that's where we want to get, but we learn something with every new city rollout, and we've found it's a pretty delicate issue, because I mean you really you know, let's talk about the cities. I mean, I almost had Austin instead of Louisville announced at the Conference of Mayors until the president of the Restaurant Association called the mayor and said, "What the hell are you doing?" You know, and so this becomes a political hot button, as you all are you know, familiar with. This is you know, because you've got a human being going in and making subjective you know, calls about what you know whether or not a particular establishment is up to par, and so and there's a lot of emotions, and there's a lot of interest in sort of suppressing this type of information. So I think in the long view, that's definitely a possibility. I would have to ask our engineers if we could do sort of a multi-city flipping of the switch as you described, but we can explore that offline, get our technical folks on the phone. I think there was somebody else that had their hand raised, like Stephanie.
Oh. Go ahead, Steph.
Hi, Luther. This is Stephanie from Decade Software. I wanted to ask you, if agencies go on a stage list, what is the anticipated length of this timeline?
I couldn't hear that question. Could somebody repeat it?
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay, sorry. Hi, Luther. This is Stephanie from Decade Software. I had a question about the length and the timeline of this waiting list. What are you anticipating as far as, the next step after LA County? How long can these agencies expect to hear back from you and get on that waiting list?
It's tough to say. We really this project has sort of buy-in from the at the top of the ladder at Yelp, but it's not. It isn't something that it's not like a new form of advertisement. So it's not like it's not something that is that currently receives like a lot of engagement by most of our users. So it's something that we really love, and we think it's the right thing to do, and we think it's kind of empowering, and over time will give a site like Yelp competitive advantages. Although I should mention this, because it's an open data standard, when you share this feed, other companies haven't adopted Lives yet, but nothing stops Foursquare, Google, OpenTables, and GAT from adopting the same process and building Lives feeds that allow them to ingest it. We actually want that to happen. We're inviting as many municipalities as possible, as well as platforms to the table to really make Lives ubiquitous. But to answer your question, to not answer your question, because I don't know, it really depends. If you were the city of New York coming to me saying, hey, we want to get this done as soon as possible, I could probably get 3 engineers, totally dedicated to it, because again, we're looking, how do we have, what's the lowest hanging fruit in terms of touching the most number of people. It's just something that really depends, and hopefully to Darrell's question, we'll be able to figure out a way to get multi-city implementation without ruffling too many political feathers very soon. And I think we're learning and making the process faster with each city. So I imagine by the end of this year I'll have a sort of a clear process in place. But again, just want to add the caveat, we're very sort of early into this.
Thank you, Luther. That's about all the time we have today for questions. I'm going to go ahead and give it away for Leslie to announce the CEUs.
Okay, thank you, Jill. We do offer continuing education for today's presentation, and I do want to thank Luther so much for this presentation. It was incredible information, and I just see that this is the future for our restaurant scores, and it's so exciting to see this being laid out before us. To receive continuing education units for this webinar today, what we need you to do is to go onto the CCDEH website at ccdeh.com. There's a survey there. Actually, it's not up there right now, but it will be there by tomorrow or the next day. And it has some questions about the presentation today, so hopefully you were paying attention. And then there's a feedback on the value of today's presentation, and then there's also a $15 fee that needs to be paid. If you have any questions about continuing education, you can contact Cheryl Baldwin at cheryl@ccdeh.com. And go on to the next slide. Your feedback is valuable. Again, even if you're not seeking continuing education units, you can access the quiz online, and there is the customer feedback portion of that survey that we would love for you to fill out. We really appreciate that, and it helps us improve for next year's Data Summit. Okay, so next slide. I think there's one more. Is there? No. Oh, so again, I want to thank everyone that helped on this webinar today. Cheryl Baldwin, manager at CCDEH, Justin Milan, our executive director, Tim Snelling, who helps with the CCDEH website, and Darrell Booth with Decade Software Company, and Stephanie and Jill and Vlad at Decade Software, who helped host the webinar today, and of course Luther Lowe from Yelp. I believe there's one more slide. Is there one more? If not, I do invite you to join us next Thursday at 9 o'clock. I'm very excited that Darrell Booth, the president of Decade Software, will be providing a survey of handheld field tablets. So if you're interested in going to handheld field tablets, he'll have a number of tablets that he's checked out and surveyed, and he's going to show those features to us and the pros and cons. So I hope you can join us next week. Thank you, and I'll see you then. Bye.
Thank you, everybody. Have a great day.
Bye.
Bye.